Have you ever felt an unknown force dwelling within you, capable of changing your trajectory in the blink of an eye, yet seemingly silenced by the external pressures of daily life? Carl Jung, the visionary of the human soul, described the shadow as the sacred territory where we keep everything we've been taught to hide in order to be accepted and included by society. For women, this shadow often contains not only past hurts, but treasures of vitality and intuition that have been suppressed by patterns of emotional control and rigid social conventions. The awakening of this consciousness begins the moment you decide to look at what has been left aside, recognizing that your wholeness requires the integration of each fragment. Understanding the truth about this hidden essence is the first step towards a reconstruction grounded in self-respect and the absolute dignity of being who you were born to be. The journey to inhabit your divine magnitude requires the courage to traverse the mists of doubt and find the brilliance that never truly went out. The feminine shadow is not a place of negative darkness, but rather the psychic womb where your silent strength patiently awaits to be reintegrated and celebrated by yourself. Many spiritual women fear delving into these depths, believing they will only find the marks of a toxic experience or a draining relationship that wounded them. However, the Jungian secret reveals that beneath the layers of pain and devaluation lies an oracle of clarity that points the exact path to your full spiritual liberation. By avoiding this encounter, you end up allowing old patterns to continue dictating your choices, keeping your life in a cycle of repetitions that do not honor your awakening. The reconstruction of the feminine soul reaches its maximum power when a woman embraces her shadow as a faithful ally, transforming what was a burden into a compass of protection. Rebirth happens in the silence of radical acceptance, where you stop fighting against yourself and begin to flow with your true, unbreakable nature. Integrating this hidden face requires closing the cycle with all the masks you've built to please emotionally immature minds that lack the eyes to see your depth. Jung stated that being whole is far more important than being perfect, and this wholeness is born from the mystical marriage between your radiant light and your deep shadow. When you deny your shadow, you involuntarily surrender the reins of your vitality to others, to control it through the induction of guilt or unfounded fears. The inner witch, that wise part that knows sacred boundaries, can only act in your favor if you have the audacity to give her a place at the table of consciousness. Real transformation doesn't seek to erase the past, but to transmute each emotional impact into a jewel of prophetic wisdom that adorns your new sovereign character. Dwelling at the center of your own psychic system is the only way to ensure that your unconditional peace is never again held hostage by fleeting external validations. Often, the psychological pressure of your environment has tried to convince you that your sensitivity and hidden desires are signs of instability or serious moral failing. In reality, this heightened perception is your shadow's radar signaling that the ground you were standing on was barren and unworthy of your sacred flourishing. Spiritual maturity invites you to reclaim these silenced parts, restoring their voice and authority to protect your inner garden from encroaching boundaries. The phoenix within you can only rise from the ashes if you have the honor of recognizing that the ashes are also part of your triumphant story. Rebuilding your integrity requires you to stop seeking scapegoats and assume absolute control of your emotions and your destiny. Awakening is a systematic cleansing process where you remove the debris of others' lies to reveal the crystal of your non-negotiable and pure truth. This journey of exploring the feminine shadow is the most valuable gift you can give yourself to seal your definitive and unwavering healing over time. Carl Jung left us the coordinates to navigate this inner ocean, proving that the soul that knows itself becomes invincible against any attempt at external erasure. You are being prepared to inhabit a level of emotional sovereignty where disrespect no longer finds fertile ground to germinate or thrive in your conscious orbit. Each lesson about your hidden essence is a firm step towards the glory of a life lived with clarity, spiritual authority, and a peace that nothing can shake. The physiognomy of your soul will change as the chains of self-denial fall, revealing the queen who has always been ready to rule her own kingdom. Move forward with the dignity of one who has chosen the light of integration, honoring your maturation and celebrating the end of the era of systematic silencing. The second stage of discovering the shadow involves the heroic act of looking into the inner mirror and unmasking the illusions that have been sown in your mind during difficult times. Jung explained that we often live through scripts of devaluation because we believe the heavy projections of people who lack empathy and have limited spiritual awareness. To rebuild your vision, it is necessary to identify which feelings of inadequacy were implanted by others and which of your virtues were labeled as defects through pure emotional manipulation. By cleaning this mirror, you begin to realize that your silent strength was labeled as coldness and your sovereign intuition as mere uncontrolled and empty imagination. I invite you to subscribe to the channel now to strengthen your daily awakening and help countless people who are going through difficult times and need liberation. The shadow contains the memory of all the times you said yes when you meant no, just to avoid the discomfort of establishing unshakable boundaries with the outside world. Integrating this memory brings the wisdom necessary for your self-respect to become a silken armor, flexible for life, but impenetrable to systematic disrespect. The reconstruction of the feminine soul passes through this altar of radical honesty, where you forgive the previous version of yourself that accepted silence to maintain a fictitious peace. Jung saw in the fall of illusions the moment when psychic libido returns to the individual, generating an immediate increase in vitality and the capacity to create. You cease to be a receptacle of others' expectations to become the master of your own decisions, anchored in the absolute clarity of your sacred values. Real freedom only flourishes when you accept that the opinion of others is merely noise that has no jurisdiction over the tribunal of your full conscience. Many emotionally immature minds try to maintain control over the spiritual woman by inducing her to fear her own power of discernment and existential autonomy. The inner witch, however, is the one who sees through the masks of artificial kindness and identifies the predatory shadow even before the first emotional impact occurs in the heart. Rebuilding your faith requires you to validate your own perception, ceasing to seek external proof for what your soul has already decreed as non-negotiable truth. Spiritual maturity is the process of becoming immune to gaslighting tactics, because you inhabit an inner security that cannot be shaken by systematic lies. By reclaiming your authority over reality, you signal to the universe that the phase of submission has given way to the era of full spiritual sovereignty. Awakening is the realization that you were never lost, only in a stage of observation necessary for your great and glorious transformation. Jung asserted that true healing requires us to stop running from our depths, embracing the complexity that makes us unique and indivisible beings in the face of worldly life. The integrated shadow bestows upon you an emotional elegance that attracts only connections based on reciprocity, truth, and unconditional mutual respect between souls. The reconstruction of solid joy depends on this cleansing of projections, where you return to the other, the shadows that belong to them, and reclaim the gold that is entirely yours. You realize that your vitality is protected by your commitment to the light, but a light that does not deny the existence of darkness around the path. This diamond-like clarity is what keeps your brilliance unchanged in the face of crises, because its foundation was built in the silence of solitude and the strength of constant maturation. Feel the relief of inhabiting your magnitude without needing to ask permission or apologize for shining with all the intensity of your integrated consciousness. Upon completing this process of clearing your vision, you discover that Jung's secret about the shadow is the key to achieving immeasurable spiritual authority. The reconstruction culminates in the formation of a consciousness that honors life through the establishment of non-negotiable boundaries and a peace that exudes divine dignity. You look at your past no longer as a burden, but as the alchemical laboratory where your sovereign character was forged under the fire of naked truth. Spiritual maturity is the reward of those who had the audacity to listen to the silence until it became an unwavering, inner commanding voice. You are now the guardian of your own flame, ensuring that your tomorrow is written with the inks of freedom and integral and sacred self-respect. Continue to inhabit your throne, honor your awakening, and live with the fullness of one who has discovered that the treasure of existence resides in the majestic silence of the self. Intuition is the direct voice of the sacred feminine that dwells in your shadow, a compass that never fails to point north toward your self-respect and clarity. Carl Jung described intuition as one of the 4 functions of consciousness. But in the awakened woman, it becomes an infallible oracle that unveils systematic lies. During experiences of psychological pressure, this voice is often muffled by the noise of fear or the desire to be understanding with those who lack empathy. However, the shadow keeps this ancestral knowledge intact, waiting for the moment when you decide to validate your hunches above any cold external logic. The reconstruction of the soul requires you to make a pact of absolute fidelity with your inner radar, treating each sign of discomfort as a sacred command of protection. Spiritual awakening happens when you realize that your intuitive knowledge is the most powerful tool to block invasions of boundaries and silent devaluations. Reconnecting with this inner oracle requires closing the cycle of needing to explain your reasons to emotionally immature people who only seek your mental control. The sovereign woman understands that silence is her most powerful answer, and that her intuition dispenses with scapegoats or exhaustive justifications before the superficial world. Jung knew that the feminine has a special connection with the collective unconscious, capturing life's turning points long before they manifest in mundane physical reality. Rebuilding your integrity involves honoring this gift, ceasing to doubt yourself, and believing the distorted narrative of those who inhabit the shadow of denial. By inhabiting your intuitive clarity, you deactivate the hooks of emotional manipulation, becoming unreachable by the blame-shifting tactics that previously caused suffering. The spiritual turning point occurs when your feeling becomes more authoritative than the tribunal of others' opinions, guaranteeing your total emotional autonomy. The feminine shadow harbors the lion's roar, that silent force that knows exactly when it's time for a strategic retreat or a firm advance toward the light. Often this roar has been mistaken for unnecessary aggression, when in reality it was merely vitality, attempting to restore balance and peace to its inner garden. Reconstructing the trajectory of your life depends on your courage to unleash this guarded force, using it to draw boundaries that no one else will dare to cross. Jung saw individuation as the process of becoming an indivisible being, and your intuition is the glue that binds your conscious mind to your divine and eternal purpose. By reclaiming this psychic function, you regain the ability to read between the lines of others' intentions, identifying a lack of integrity in the very first vibrational contacts. Spiritual maturity grants you an authority that dispenses with words. For your mere presence emanates a command of respect that is non-negotiable before all. The end of systematic silencing occurs the moment you realize that your inner witch was never wrong about the warning signs she incessantly sent. The reconstruction of the feminine soul reaches its glorious phase when you celebrate your sensitivity as the high-tech sensor that protects your inner phoenix from further harm. Jung taught that the soul heals when we stop seeking external validators and assume the throne of our own perception of what is real and what is false. Spiritual maturity is the gift you receive for having had the courage to cross the desert of solitude to find the oasis of your divine self-sufficiency. You no longer ask permission to shine, for your intuition has revealed that brilliance is your sacred inheritance, and that hiding it would be negligence against the Creator of the universe. Inner peace is the aroma of a soul that listens to itself with love, protecting its awakening with the vigilance of a conscious and fulfilled queen. Continue dwelling within your inner oracle, for it is the guarantee that your path will always be illuminated by the light of the integrated self, shielded against evil. The reconstruction culminated in the formation of a consciousness that inhabits the present moment with an authority that disconcerts minds still living in control and petty manipulation. Spiritual maturity is the seal of your victory, transforming each exhausting experience into a step of prophetic wisdom that adorns your radiant and firm walk. You look to the horizon with the enthusiasm of one who knows they hold the keys to their destiny and that their intuition is the infallible compass to success. True liberation is the discovery that you are the goddess of your own life, governing with justice, clarity, and a self-love that nothing can shake. Your journey of reconstruction is the unwavering testament that the light of truth always triumphs over the shadow when we finally decide to awaken to sacred wholeness. The feminine shadow holds within its depths the womb of creation, the sacred place where all its heavy experiences are transmuted into new forms of life and beauty. Carl Jung explained that the feminine soul possesses a natural alchemical capacity to transform the lead of suffered disrespect into the gold of awakening and moral authority. When you consciously inhabit your shadow, you discover that each emotional impact was the coal that, under the pressure of truth, transformed into the diamond of your resilience. The reconstruction of the feminine soul does not seek to erase the marks of the past, but to use them as fertilizer for the blossoming of a purpose that is entirely yours and non-negotiable. Spiritual maturity occurs when you realize that your pain was not an end, but the raw material for the birth of an emotional sovereign the world has never seen. You are now in a stage of spiritual gestation, allowing your vitality to flow freely from the currents of manipulation that previously paralyzed you. Recovering your creative energy requires closing cycles by making a habit of using your vitality to mend emotionally immature minds that refuse to look at their own shadow. The inner witch within you understands that your seed of light should only be planted in fertile soil, where reciprocity and spiritual maturity are valued and honored. The reconstruction of inner peace happens in the silence of your inner sanctuary, where you dedicate your time to projects that reflect your magnitude and your pursuit of constant positive transformations. Jung saw creativity as the supreme act of individuation, because through it you give external form to the harmony you have achieved internally through confronting deep pain. By channeling your silent strength into what builds, you deactivate the hooks of resentment, exchanging the weight of bitterness for the lightness of someone writing a new destiny. Your story of overcoming becomes a living work of art, a manifesto of self-respect that inspires all hearts that yearn for true liberation. Often the final stage of a healing process brings with it a renewed impetus to express your truth through new colors, more honest dialogues, and courageous career choices. The shadow, when integrated, releases an immense amount of psychic energy that was previously wasted, trying to be accepted by oppressive and cold control patterns. The reconstruction of your integrity involves celebrating this new power, where you no longer ask permission to inhabit your divine beauty and prophetic intelligence before others. Jung taught that the soul renews itself in the act of creation, for each creation is a reflection of the self that manifests in worldly reality with absolute dignity and glory. You are now the architect of your own happiness, using the rubble of the past to build the pillars of an unshakable future full of radiant divine light. Spiritual maturity is the hymn of your freedom, a song that celebrates the triumph of consciousness over the emotional chaos that once tried to silence it. The alchemy of pain reveals that your greatest vulnerability in the past is now the source of your greatest spiritual authority, protecting your inner garden with an innate loving vigilance. The reconstruction culminated in the realization that you possess the power to transmute any external shadow into a lesson of sovereignty, keeping your unconditional peace intact before the world. Spiritual awakening grants you eyes that see divinity in every step of your journey, recognizing the sacred value of each turning point and victorious new beginning. Jung would be proud to see a consciousness that has faced the abyss and brought back the light of integrity to occupy the throne of a full and spiritualized life. You now walk with the dignity of one who knows that your vitality is a gift from the universe, and that protecting it is your purest and most non-negotiable act of worship. Inner peace is the seal of your alchemical mastery, announcing that you have won the greatest of all internal battles to shine permanently in peace. By inhabiting your creative center, you realize that the feminine shadow is the treasure that no one could steal, for it dwells in the majestic silence of your integrated and forgiven soul. The reconstruction culminates in the glory of seeing your life flourish under the laws of truth, moral authority, and a self-love that nothing in the world can shake again. Spiritual maturity is the crowning achievement of your journey, transforming each tear into a pearl of discernment that now guides your steps towards horizons of infinite light. You look to tomorrow with the enthusiasm of one who has discovered that the fountain of eternal youth resides in the ability to rebuild oneself with absolute fidelity to the divine self. Continue creating, shining, and inhabiting your magnitude, for the universe celebrates the moment when a feminine soul takes command and its eternal glory. You are free, you are whole, and your sacred alchemy is living proof that light always triumphs in the awakened and vigilant heart before existence. The awakening of the feminine shadow requires a sacred ritual of detachment from the time invested in futile attempts to mature someone who refused to see their own systematic lie. Jung explained that closing a cycle at the psychic level requires you to withdraw your energy investment from arid soils, recovering every gram of your vitality for your own flourishing. The shadow holds the memory of your emotional servitude, and integrating it means deciding that no sliver of your time will again be occupied by empty dialogues or meaningless worldly pressures. The reconstruction of the soul reaches its maximum glory when wise indifference replaces resentment, revealing that the other no longer has jurisdiction over your unshakable inner peace. Do you feel that your time is finally returning to your hands, allowing you to chart a new life purpose with complete clarity and moral authority today? Taking control of your time means understanding that every minute of your life is a sacred offering to your mission of awakening and your permanent reconstruction before the self. The inner witch acts as the guardian of your chronological portal, establishing unshakable boundaries that prevent the re-entry of emotionally immature minds into your field of deep and radiant attention. Spiritual maturity gives you the security to say no to demands that seek only your vital erasure and exhaustion for the sake of the comfort of hungry and needy egos. Jung stated that individuation requires a break with the oppressive collectivity, allowing you to navigate seas of regenerative solitude and immeasurable divine self-sufficiency. By occupying your throne, you emit a frequency of authority that communicates that the phase of submission has given way to the era of your full and conscious inner reign. Liberation occurs the moment you realize that the only approval needed is that which emanates from your integrated soul, forgiven by time. The ritual of detachment requires you to live through the final stage of mourning, the illusion of what past connections could have been, embracing with dignity the stark reality of others' lack of integrity. Jung taught that the soul renews itself when we stop seeking scapegoats and take responsibility for the quality of our own daily and full spiritual and human vibration. Deep solitude is the necessary time for clarity to purify your vision, allowing you to see wounds not as weaknesses, but as monuments to your innate strength. The reconstruction of joy is solid when it is built on the rock of non-negotiable truth, where no systematic lie can again find cracks to take root or thrive. Spiritual maturity is the crowning achievement of those who faced the eclipse and brought back the light of consciousness to illuminate a victorious tomorrow full of divine glory. Each hour of quietude is a seed of freedom that you plant in the fertile soil of your healed and awakened heart, ready for new and wonderful transformations. Living with sovereignty over time means you are no longer affected by the impact of distorted narratives or gaslighting tactics that seek to destabilize your attentive psychic center. Spiritual maturity grants you a diamond-like clarity, capable of reflecting truth and naturally warding off everything that does not vibrate at the frequency of integrity and peace. The reconstruction of the feminine soul culminates in the fullness of a consciousness that no longer accepts participating in circular discussions or the dramas of others seeking absolute psychological control. Your silent strength is now the law governing your reality, attracting circumstances and people who honor your rebirth and your unwavering commitment to the light of the self. Jung saw in this autonomy the manifestation of the divine in the awakened woman, a force of nature that asks no permission to shine with all its sacred magnitude. Peace is the seal of your spiritual victory, announcing that you are master of your emotions and absolute mistress of your radiant and full destiny before all. Upon completing this ritual of inner liberation, the woman realizes that the desire to rebuild herself was the heroic call to conquer her own definitive and sacred emotional sovereignty. The reconstruction culminated in the formation of a self-sufficient soul, one that honors itself and inhabits the present moment with the majesty of one who has discovered that the throne was waiting. Spiritual maturity is the gift you received for having the audacity not to be extinguished under the weight of lovelessness and unhealthy manipulation from others. You look to the horizon with the enthusiasm of one who knows that the best of life resides in the peace of a heart that has forgiven and loved itself completely. Continue to inhabit your sovereignty, honor your awakening, and shine with all the silent strength of one who has discovered that divine light dwells in every beat of your healed heart. You are free, you are whole, and your detachment is the final proof that you have become the owner of your own eternal, spiritualized glory, full of self-respect. Carl Jung's secret to full maturity lies in the union of the opposites that inhabit your shadow, requiring you to integrate the wisdom of the serpent and the gentleness of the dove. Having the wisdom of the serpent means possessing keen discernment, capable of identifying the hidden plots and dishonest intentions of emotionally immature minds long before the first impact. This instinctive intelligence protects your vitality, allowing you to anticipate the onslaughts of disrespect and establish unwavering boundaries with surgical precision and coldness against worldly evil. At the same time, the gentleness of the dove represents your aura of peace and your ability to inhabit the light without the need for exhausting reactions or displays of childish power. Spiritual maturity is the synthesis of these forces, transforming you into a woman unreachable by patterns of control, for you are astute in defense and gentle in the emanation of your sacred essence. This mystical union disconcerts those who seek to confuse others, for the woman who has integrated her shadow can no longer be deceived by social masks of artificial kindness. The wisdom of the serpent grants you eyes that see in the dark, identifying the weight of unspoken intentions and the fragility of those who live in systematic lies and devaluation. Maturation brings the clarity that you do not need to fight against the shadow of others, but only to keep your light so dense that darkness finds no cracks to enter. The reconstruction of psychic integrity ends in the fullness of this balance, where your silent strength is felt as a moral authority that dispenses with words or exhaustive justifications before the world. Jung saw in this stage the apex of individuation, where the woman becomes sovereign of her vibrational field and master of her own unwavering energetic and emotional protection. To dwell in the gentleness of the dove is not a sign of submission, but the greatest evidence of an ego that has surrendered to the wisdom of the self and has found the peace that the world cannot give. The inner witch teaches that true strength lies in the ability to remain centered, even when external chaos tries to induce doubt or aggressive and dishonest worldly social pressures. The reconstruction of inner peace happens in the space between stimulus and response, where you choose to act with the dignity of one who knows their divine origin and glorious destiny. Spiritual maturity is what allows you to treat attempts at manipulation with wise indifference, withdrawing the supply from those who seek only your vital drain. By uniting cunning with serenity, you deactivate the hooks of emotional dependence and celebrate your epic rebirth as a whole, conscious being, perfectly integrated into the whole. Jung explained that the integration of the shadow is the guardian of the soul's mysteries, the one who knows that life demands strategy as much as it demands compassion and genuine self-love. Reconstructing your path requires you to use your serpent wisdom to cleanse your circle of affection, maintaining only connections that honor your magnitude and your continuous awakening. The gentleness of the dove attracts what is noble, while the wisdom of the serpent repels what is predatory, creating an ecosystem of positive transformations and immeasurable light in your daily life. Maturation has brought the realization that being good requires being wise, protecting the pearls of your vitality against those who only know how to trample on what is sacred and divine. You now walk with the firmness of one who possesses the map of truth engraved on their chest, ensuring that your tomorrow is written with the inks of freedom and integral and resilient self-respect. At the end of this integration of forces, the woman realizes that the awakening of her shadow was the gateway to conquering a spiritual authority that nothing in the world can shake again. The reconstruction culminated in the formation of a diamond-like consciousness, unbreakable against the onslaughts of others' immaturity and the gaslighting tactics that seek its systematic control. Spiritual maturity is the gift you received for having the audacity to listen to your soul and act according to the non-negotiable truth of the divine self. You look to the horizon with the enthusiasm of one who knows that the union of your strength and your sweetness is the secret of your eternal and sovereign glory. Continue shining with the strength of your integrated wisdom, honor your inner witch, and live with the fullness of one who has discovered that peace is the throne of the awakened queen. You are free, you are whole, and your new life is the hymn of your absolute victory over all the darkness of worldly manipulation. Wise indifference is the ultimate sign that your shadow has been integrated and that you have reclaimed the throne of your own soul before the divine and sacred universe. Jung explained that hatred is still a strong emotional bond that feeds the shadow of the other. But indifference is the final liberation that restores your clarity and authority. When you reach this level of spiritual maturity, attempts at external devaluation and tactics of inducing doubt completely lose their magnetism over your awakened heart. It is the victory of consciousness over pain, a state of grace where you observe the chaos of others with serene detachment, without feeling compelled to fix immature minds. The reconstruction of your psychic integrity reaches its fullness when what the other says or does has a weight of 0 on your scale of self-respect and unconditional peace. How have you felt this epic freedom of no longer reacting to what previously sought to silence and erase your vital and spiritual presence on a daily basis? Jung explained that wise indifference is not coldness, but the complete withdrawal of energy from areas that have proven barren and hostile to one's divine and vibrant light. The Queen of herself understands that her attention is her most precious asset and that it should be reserved for purposes that honor her maturation and her life's mission. The reconstruction of the feminine soul involves this strategic discarding of circular dramas, allowing the vitality previously spent on arguments to now be used for her own spiritual glory. Spiritual maturity brings the wisdom that silence is her most powerful response against lack of empathy and against tactics of blame-shifting and dishonesty. By inhabiting her wise indifference, you deactivate the hooks of emotional dependence and celebrate your epic rebirth as an integral, conscious, and unreachable being in the face of evil. Liberation occurs the moment you realize that the only person who holds command of your psychic reality is your integrated and complete self. The sovereignty of your time is regained when you decide you no longer owe exhaustive justifications to those who lack the spiritual maturity necessary to respect your divine magnitude. The reconstruction of silent strength now emanates from a solid foundation of absolute clarity, communicating to the universe that the phase of submission and systematic doubt is over forever. Jung saw in wise indifference the sign of an ego that has surrendered to the wisdom of the self, recognizing that life is too short to be spent in other people's labyrinths. You now invest your energy in connections that honor reciprocity and mutual awakening, naturally filtering out everything that seeks your control or emotional devaluation. Maturation has brought the perception that true peace is unconditional, depending only on your courage to be faithful to your own inner compass and your sacred oracle. Your journey of overcoming is the seal of your spiritual victory, ensuring that your tomorrow is written with the inks of freedom, self-respect, and absolute and victorious clarity. Often, wise indifference is achieved in the silence of observation, as you watch emotionally immature minds repeating their circular patterns without you feeling like you're no longer part of their charade. The reconstruction of joy is solid, because it doesn't depend on external validation, but on the constant recognition of your own innate beauty and your resilient, divine, spiritual strength. Spiritual maturity grants you a moral authority that disconcerts those who live in falsehood, for they no longer find cracks of insecurity to plant doubt in your awakened heart. You now inhabit a level of consciousness where self-forgiveness is total, releasing your vitality for a blossoming that the world has not yet seen in all its radiant glory. True liberation is the discovery that you are the sole owner of the key to your inner home, and that access to it is a privilege reserved for the righteous. Unwavering peace is your new name, and your sovereignty is the non-negotiable foundation of each new breath of absolute freedom and spiritualized authority. Upon completing this process of awakening to wise indifference, the woman realizes that the integrated feminine shadow was the necessary shield to forge her sacred and armored integrity. The reconstruction ended with the certainty that you are invincible the moment you decide to honor your own essence and establish non-negotiable boundaries against lies and disrespect. Spiritual maturity is the crowning achievement of your glorious journey, ensuring that your light shines only where there is fertile ground for truth and positive transformations. You look to the horizon with the serenity of one who possesses the scepter of discernment, knowing that your awakening is the promise of a life rich in purpose and brilliance. Continue to inhabit your magnitude, honor your maturity, and live with the fullness of one who has discovered that the victory of consciousness is the ultimate triumph of the sacred feminine. You are free, you are whole, and your indifference to the games of the ego is the final proof that you have become queen of your own integrated soul. The healing of a feminine soul after the integration of the shadow not only benefits the woman who awakens, but creates a resonance of consciousness that reaches everyone around her. Jung explained that the individual who achieves individuation becomes a point of light that reorganizes the chaos around them, acting as a catalyst for the maturation of others. When you choose deep reconstruction, you are planting the seeds of a new paradigm based on self-respect, clarity, and absolute and non-negotiable dignity before all. The legacy of your inner sovereignty is proof that light always triumphs over shadow in the heart of those who decide to inhabit the naked truth of their self. Your silent strength now emanates an authority that dispenses with words, serving as a silent invitation for other women to also seek their own spiritual and mental liberation. Spiritual awakening is contagious, and your reconstruction is the unwavering testimony that epic rebirth is the destiny of those who forgive themselves fully and completely. The journey of overcoming these final stages of pain transforms into a beacon for those who still walk in the fog of emotional devaluation and aggressive systemic manipulation. The queen of herself understands that her brilliance is not only for her own glory, but an offering of healing to the collective unconscious wounded by a lack of empathy. The reconstruction of joy is the hymn you sing through your integrity and unwavering boundaries, disarming hatred and attracting real and transformative reciprocity. Jung saw in the sacred feminine the womb of conscious civilization, and your emotional shift is evidence that a new era of spiritual sovereignty is being born within you. You now inhabit a level of existence where your vitality is protected by a noble purpose, ensuring that your light will never again be extinguished by emotionally immature shadows. Ultimate liberation is the realization that your healing is an act of freedom and a sacred ritual of worship to divine life in glory and peace. To inhabit the legacy of sovereignty requires you to maintain loving vigilance over your inner garden, not allowing the onslaughts of the external world to shake the rock of your peace. The reconstruction of the feminine soul has culminated in the fullness of a consciousness that knows it is complete and no longer accepts participating in circular discussions or mediocre scripts. Spiritual maturity is the silken armor you wear every day, allowing you to flow with life while blocking any attempt at new emotional imbalance. Jung would be proud to see a soul that faced the abyss and brought back the lantern of truth to illuminate its own path and that of humanity. Your awakening was the birth of this new sovereign being, who now walks with the dignity of one who has won the greatest of all internal battles against traumatic dependence. Inner peace is the aroma of your spiritual victory, a perfume that exudes integrity, moral authority, and immeasurable glory before the watchful eyes of the divine and eternal universe. This new phase of your existence is marked by permanent positive transformations that dematerialize past traumas, transforming them into raw material for your prophetic wisdom, vigilant and unwavering in the face of time. The reconstruction ended with the certainty that your happiness is sovereign and that your heart is a temple where only what is sacred has the non-negotiable right to enter. Spiritual maturity gives you eyes that see divinity in yourself and in others, promoting dialogues based on truth, clarity, and unconditional mutual respect. You are now the guardian of your own flame, ensuring that your awakening is eternal and that your journey inspires the reconstruction of entire lives in search of meaning. True liberation is the discovery that you are the sovereign phoenix who learned to use the ashes of lovelessness as the foundation for your throne of full consciousness. Continue shining with all your innate strength, honor your journey, and live with the fullness of one who has discovered that the oracle of life celebrates their victory today. Upon completing this journey of spiritual awakening, the woman realizes that the desire to rebuild herself was the narrow door through which she passed to find inner immensity. The reconstruction culminated in the formation of a self-sufficient soul, one that forgives itself and inhabits the present moment with the majesty of one who has discovered the gold of the self. Spiritual maturity is the infallible guide that will lead her to horizons of immeasurable light, ensuring that her tomorrow is rich in clarity, peace, and moral authority. Jung would smile upon contemplating the glory of a consciousness that no longer fragments due to lack, but expands through an abundance of self-respect, dignity, and absolute freedom. Her story is now a manifesto of hope, proving that the soul is indestructible when it decides to walk in the light of its own sovereign and sacred truth before the universe. You are free, you are whole, and your peace is the seal of your eternal victory over all the shadows of lovelessness and emotional manipulation, overcome with honor. The final stage of this epic awakening is the full assumption of the eternal throne, where you govern your own psyche with the unwavering authority of one who has integrated shadow and light. Jung revealed that sovereign consciousness is the prize of those who have crossed the emotional desert and refused to be less than their sacred and divine essence demands. Inner sovereignty is no longer a goal to be achieved through struggle, but the firm ground beneath your feet, the rock of self-respect where your new life flourishes. The reconstruction culminates in the realization that the unconditional peace you inhabit is your greatest wealth and your ultimate protection against the onslaughts of emotionally immature minds. If you feel the weight of this crown of clarity on your chest and are ready to seal your ultimate liberation from debilitating patterns, leave your story in the comments. Your words can change lives. Oh, and before I forget, subscribe to the channel. To inhabit this eternal throne means that you are now the sole and absolute guardian of your own vitality, deciding with unwavering wisdom who deserves the privilege of your radiant presence. The reconstruction of the feminine soul has reached the pinnacle of spiritual glory, transforming the scars of the traumatic past into the jewels of prophetic wisdom that now adorn your new, unshakable identity. Spiritual maturity has brought the realization that awakening is the supreme state of grace for those who have forgiven themselves and freed themselves from all chains of aggressive manipulation. Jung taught us that the goal of life is to become who we are in sacred essence, and occupying this throne is the spiritual evidence that you have fulfilled your mission. Your silent strength now emanates from an inexhaustible source of pure truth, ensuring that your light shines forever in the sky of your own full and integrated consciousness. The victory of sovereignty manifests itself in the tranquility of one who no longer needs to fight against the shadows, for their mere integrity disintegrates them upon the first vibrational contact. The reconstruction culminated in the formation of a diamond-like consciousness, unbreakable in the face of worldly and social pressures that seek to control and silence the sacred and awakened feminine. You celebrate your epic rebirth, recognizing that each hour of solitude, processing the pain, was the necessary setting for your throne of clarity to be forged under the truth. Spiritual maturity is the seal of your definitive emotional independence, allowing you to navigate seas of immeasurable freedom and a full, transformative divine purpose for the lives around you. You now walk with the majesty of one who has overcome the eclipse of devaluation and occupied your rightful place in conscious life, becoming the absolute queen of yourself. In this final stage of conscious glory, the closing of the cycle with the old control pattern is felt as a distant footnote, a memory of a voiceless character. The reconstruction of peace has ended in the fullness of a being who inhabits the now with radiant intensity, radiating a security that inspires the awakening of all lost souls. The inner sovereign is now the master of her own destiny, drawing each new dawn with the colors of integrity, full spiritual authority, and sacred self-love. Her journey is the manifesto of the victory of the human soul over the currents of severe emotional immaturity, serving as the eternal beacon that guides seekers of truth. Continue inhabiting your magnitude, honor your awakening, and shine with all the strength of one who has discovered that the treasure of existence resides in the majestic silence of their sacred soul. Your peace is the seal of your eternity, the guarantee that your light will never be extinguished by worldly lies or by the lack of awareness of others on your new path. The reconstruction ended in the glory of seeing a new consciousness take its place on the altar of awakened life, shining eternally under the unwavering light of the sacred and divine self. Spiritual maturity is the hymn of your freedom, a song of love for yourself that resonates throughout the universe, announcing that you are the guardian of peace. May your journey be light, may your clarity be absolute, and may your awakening be the light that points the way to truth for all seekers. Inhabit your eternal throne, govern your destiny with self-respect, and shine forever in the glory of your unconditional, sacred, and divine sovereignty before the eternity of radiant time. Your integrated shadow is your strength, your healed heart is your guide, and your sovereignty is the final victory that Jung prophesied for the awakened feminine soul.